Bug Eye guys. Today I am going to beat these HS2 carburetors with a hammer, and I will show you why over here on the card table. Okay, this is an HS2 carburetor, and before we get started talking about why I was hitting it with a hammer, this is important. This is the 3 screws on top of the float chamber, the float bowl. And this is an H1 carburetor, which would be the original style that came on a Bug Eye. Let's get them matched up. You can see here, by the way, this is an 1.25" diameter, HS2, which is actually 2/8 is why that's how they numbered it. So H1 was 1/8, 1 and 1/8. H2 is 1 and 2/8. And you can see this is 1 1/4", this is 1 1/8". You get a lot more air and fuel into the car with this bigger carburetor. And fortunately for all of us, in 1961-ish, the Mark II Sprite came out with a 948 engine with this carburetor attached. So they, at the factory, realized that this was no longer serving them. They switched to this on the same engine. So many 948 Bug Eyes have these carburetors. You may have them, you may have the originals. If you don't have these, we love these because they're bigger and the choke mechanism is far superior. This is much easier to actuate, much easier to service, much easier to live with, much less likely to get stuck. This choke mechanism is a kooky bunch of worn pieces that generally don't work as well. So HS2's big commercial here for this product, and we sell new ones that we really like. Anyway, back to the reason for this video. The float chamber is obviously essential. It's not all that different from a toilet. You got to fill up with fuel in here in order for it to get over into the carburetor here. And in order for that to occur, this little float has to it has to have a valve that functions, which is right there. And that little valve underneath, right inside that gold thing, gets stuck sometimes. And when it gets stuck, you won't have any fuel to burn in the carburetor. So you've got to get this thing free, but the float doesn't matter. What matters is the valve. And here's a valve right here. This valve is a new one. And this has a Viton tip. And so this little Viton tip lives inside that little seat inside there. And this is constantly moving to open and close. This is basically the valve that allows the fuel to flow into this chamber. So by hitting this gently with the side, with a hammer as I was, what I'm trying to do is to unstick this little needle from its seat to allow the fuel to flow. Because when this gets stuck inside there, you basically have a plugged fuel line. No matter how good your fuel line in your tank is, if you can't get fuel into this bowl, the car's not going to run. And it's pretty common, well, I wouldn't say pretty common, but often after one of these Sprites or MGBs or Big Heelys or Jaguar, whatever it may be that's running on some variant of these SU carburetors, because they almost always have a float bowl like this with a needle and seat. They have to regulate the fuel. From ethanol in particular, you can get just enough stickiness on this tip to stop the fuel from flowing. So by tapping the side of this, you're effectively, see how gravity took it out that time. You would like it to take it out all the time, but sometimes it needs a little help. Anyway, this is a diagnostic tool or a diagnostic trick that may help you get your car to run. When this happens, you might get 2 cylinders only. The car runs irregularly. It may run and then run out because you've burned out the fuel that's in here, and then it can't replenish because this is stuck. So by wrapping on the side, it gives you a chance to hopefully free this up. And there are many variants for these. We had one, but it seems to have, let's see what's inside here. This is the H1. It's if I can't pull this out, you sometimes need a pliers to get it out. This one is, here we go. Thank you to our able-bodied Mr. Hand who stepped in to help me. This is a metal needle, just sitting in a brass seat. So again, you have the Viton tip on this one. This is one that may be in your car, and if you have this, this is less apt to get stuck because the metal and just the slightest bit of gumminess will cause this to stick inside this type of needle and seat. It's very easy to replace these, and so that could be the problem. By hitting on the side of the bowl, I'm hoping this falls out and the car can proceed and fill the float bowl properly. One last thing I want to share about floats. So this is the H1 again, and this is an H1 float, it's brass. And over here on the H2, they used a cone-shaped float. There are a couple different styles of mounting, but this is one of the common floats. And interestingly enough, the brass one, they both have vulnerabilities, the H1 and the HS2. The brass one is vulnerable because the fuel, and whether it's ethanol or not, I can't say for certain, but fuel over time, and probably ethanol, attacks these unions and they will fill up with fuel. So it's common to take these out and they're full of fuel, so they obviously are sunk floats. We do have new brass ones in our catalog, so that's a good thing to carry a spare, because a sunk float will also give you, of course, carburetor problems because you won't have proper level control in the float bowl. But over here on the HS2, this cone-shaped float also is attacked by ethanol at the plastic seams. We also commonly take these out and find fuel at some level inside them, so they can no longer function properly. And we make a black ethanol, we sell a black ethanol proof float in our catalog to replace this. So whichever carburetor you have, you need to know a little bit about which float and whether or not your floats are up to spec. But there are some solutions for that. Anyway, that's what we have today here from Bug Eye Guys.